All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. This meeting will be recorded and available for playback after this event. So with that, welcome to today's manufacturing user group event on Salesforce picks up the slack for manufacturers presented by Rootstock. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. So welcome if you've never joined one of these events before. I'm Delaney Langston and I'm one of the co-leaders of this group along with Andrew Reiser. My contact information is on the screen if you need to email me or reach out or want to connect on LinkedIn. And just a thank you, we are now over 700 members in our group and continuing to grow. So we appreciate all of our members and spreading the word to those around you, also in the manufacturing vertical. The plan for this year, everything is still pretty virtual as we're dealing with COVID. So, continuing to grow with a focus on the manufacturing industry. So we'll continue to post articles, materials, anything related to that in the group. And if you guys have questions or want to engage in discussions as well, we have lots of members who would love to participate and chat with you on different topics. So definitely feel free to post in the group and collaborate, because that's what we're here for. As far as meetings, we still plan to meet virtually on a quarterly basis with different presentations, either from Salesforce or partners, or even community group users, different trailblazers out there. If you've got a story you want to share, definitely feel free to let us know, or if there's a specific topic you're interested in for a future quarterly meetup, share that as well. We would love your feedback. So with that, today's presenters, we're going to move into that. So we've got Tom Brennan and Ramesh Sunder with Rootstock, as well as Andrew Reiser, who will be joining for the Q&A portion of the slides. So with that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Great, thanks, Delaney. Congratulations on 700 members. That's fantastic. That's quite an achievement. So I guess, can you see that okay, Delaney?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess what today's about, Ramesh and I have been looking at this Salesforce potential acquisition of Slack. It is not completed yet. There's still some DOJ steps going on with it, I believe. $27.7 billion. And it caught our interest very early on. We're a Slack shop already ourselves. And we started kind of thinking about what are the possibilities of Slack and what can it do for manufacturers, our customers primarily. Now we're an ERP provider. I'm going to talk a little bit about that just so you get a sense of where we're coming from. We've been sort of contemplating what can manufacturers do with this. And so we kind of got a two-part play here for you in that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we see with Slack, maybe some of the differences there are with Chatter and what manufacturers can do. And then Ramesh is going to share some of his thoughts. He's been installing it, playing with it, and looking at different aspects on it, on how it can be used, maybe some of the security aspects as well. And so he'll share our thoughts. So really, these are just sort of musings, if you will, and what we've learned so far. We're not speaking for Salesforce. We don't know exactly what they're going to do with this once it's done, but we were delighted, and I think Ramesh will show you, is we were delighted about how integrated it is with not only Salesforce, but custom objects like Rootstocks and other apps that go in it. So that was a big plus. So I guess just by way of background, Rootstock builds cloud ERP applications. We build them on the Salesforce platform. So everything from placing a sales order all the way through production, inventory, and financials. And if any of you have seen us speak before, we're big proponents of the platform and everything it can do for us, and all the various components of it, including even Chatter. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So what we've done is then built our ERP system here on one data model on the Salesforce platform. And now what's great about it is all these tools on the bottom work with it. And Now we're wondering, well, we know how it works with Chatter, and now we've got down here, will it be Slack, and will Chatter get replaced by Slack? Don't know the answer to that, but there's certainly some crossover, some interesting things that you'll see from Ramesh here going forward. So before we kind of get into Slack, I just thought we'd have a quick ode to Chatter. I actually was a big Chatter fan for a lot of things, in terms of being able to, set up groups and things like that. And one of the things I always loved about it is that Chatter, was part of the system. It was, you could chat on an object and it becomes part of an audit trail. So if two controllers were fighting over an intercompany transaction and saying why that was done and what was going on, that would all be in the audit trail. It could be something like that, or any conversation you had with a customer, or maybe a customer rep and somebody in operations having a chat. It's all there and you can see what's going on. So the conversation is attached to the actual ERP data or CRM data in the system. And so then also, it becomes kind of integral in that you can share files from your feed and create actions from the feed. In fact, Chatter can even initiate a chat stream if you want it to. So really, really slick in a lot of the ways it could do. It was before its time, in my view, and some things in the way it was so integrated into the Salesforce environment and all the objects. And to this day, when you go in and you're going to build an app, you're using the app builder or something like that, you'll see Chatter as one of the components that's part of it. And to me, that's one of the big values of the Salesforce platform, is be able to see everything all in one place. All the tools, dashboards, reports, analytics, they're all part of the same environment. It's not sort of a stack. And one of my fears of with Slack, would it become this thing that's then bolted on, Frankenstein side onto the Salesforce environment? And so far, by the way, there's some good news on that Ramesh will tell you on that. So let's just say, what does Slack offer? And so, if you've used it, you can do, instant voice calls and video calls, actually conference calls, get people in. So if you're having that conversation, it could just combust into a call and things get done. Everything's done in context. Things happen faster as well. And now you got screen sharing as well, which is more and more critical in that. But one of the big things I think that's this whole acquisition offers that I'm still trying to comprehend is the whole notion of how with Slack, we think anyways, that it's going to be much easier for companies to create these collaborative real-time connections with people outside their company and not just inside. And so there's a tool I'd urge you to look into called Slack Connect. And I don't know that you necessarily needed all this, but it's there now, that allows you to connect with people outside your company in a secure way, in a very easy way. And the way I think about this is what's happening with this is, when you think about your cell phone, you have a cell number or phone number, it can be used and you reach anybody in the world. Same thing with an email address. Well, that hasn't really happened so much with these collaborative tools. And this is a step in that direction where you can, even in an ad hoc way, if you needed to, add a connection to somebody or an outside organization and do it quickly. Now, Slack also has like a freemium model, so anybody can get it pretty quickly. And so we think it's going to be much more ubiquitous and available and easy to put out there, which then in turn will allow manufacturers, as you'll see, talk to their customers and suppliers more. So these are sort of some of the basics of this. And I guess I look at this from three perspectives in terms of why will this be great for Salesforce customers and especially manufacturers is, first internally, there's a lot that needs to be connected, whether it's remote workers, people working on a shop floor, people working out in the field, repairing things, salespeople on the road, people doing inventory stuff in a warehouse. It's a much more mobile and collaborative environment, the way it works, very modern in how it works. And so I think that's going to be a big plus. And overall, what we've seen is in a lot of organizations that put in something like Slack that kind of get themselves off of email, and this is social media generally, is you get a more vibrant culture in your company. And you can really tie in, if your CEOs are into it, you're from the shop floor to the top floor, it can be the lines are blurred if you want them to be. And so you can have a much more interactive culture. And that's a great thing, especially in this day and age of remote work. And one of the big things that I've seen, and I've got a couple of boys in their 20s, is that they're out in the workforce, and they don't want to work on old software, point blank. And that's a whole other story I could get into, but they don't want to work in, say, your father's ERP is the way I term it. But they need, something that's used to the way they work and live every day and have probably since junior high, so this Slack environment is a step in that direction. And we know the workforce crisis is a big problem in manufacturing. So this is a way to appeal to younger workers. Then the last thing is just get stuff done faster. When everything's kind of focused in on the channel, and I think Ramesh will talk a little bit about this. You don't have all these siloed email threads going on. Everything's in the channel, and it's more interactive. More people can participate to answer a question. So it just improves the velocity of things that happen in your company overall. So this is a great thing from an internal point of view. But then now you point that capability outside, and it's going to allow you on the CRM side to get closer to your customers, because it's really easy to create those Slack connections with them now. It's not a cumbersome thing. It's easy to do. And now you're going to be able to stay in touch, keep your fingers on the pulse of that customer, and provide them better service. And so I call it the SLA, implied SLA of an email is maybe 24 hours, whereas a chat's a lot faster than that. And so now you're being in a much more faster cycle time with your customer conversations. And sometimes that needs to be a two-way street, both directions, where you want the customer, they're thinking about changing something, you need a change order, need them to sign off on it. And if they delay it, they're still going to try to hold you to your delivery dates. So if you can get the customer to react and be a good customer as well, that's a good thing. And then, of course, just like internally, you can have spontaneous, meetings that are in context of what you're doing in this Slack channel about as well. And so you'll be able to just resolve things much more quickly, especially if you have a lot of members on that. You can do it as a group, if you will. Then the last couple things here is you can share documents and even ERP information in Slack outside the company. There are security ramifications to that. I think Ramesh will probably touch on that a little bit, and probably is something that has to be looked at more closely. But certainly that Slack Connect model is one thing that'll help. But then there's also, you have to make decisions on, just like if you put up a community today for your customers, do I want them to be able to see invoices? Do I want them to see order status and things like that? And if that's true, and you want to, then you should be able to share documents, things in that channel with the customer that are sitting deep inside of ERP, if it makes sense. And again, that's up to you to do that. So all in all, you're going to get all these interactions. You're going to have a more holistic view of the relationship and what's going on, what the temperature of the customer is. So now if you just flip that to the other side, it's really the same thing, but in a different direction. It's focusing on the R and supplier relationship management. And I actually think there's probably more needs to be done here than on CRM in a lot of ways, because I think the CRM world is a little more sophisticated on this whole system of engagement idea. But a system of engagement idea should come into fruition here for suppliers as well. And I think one way we learned that, unfortunately, the hard way is with COVID, when our suppliers all went haywire for lots of reasons. We really needed to keep an eye on what's going on, what they could deliver, what their availability was, and things like that. And you want to know what's happening. Where's my order? And so you want to be on your suppliers as well, and do anything you can do to compress the time out of your relationship. And how can you be a better customer to the supplier, and how can they be a better supplier to you? Again, it can happen through these instant conversations, more real-time capability, and again, sharing documents and ERP information. Instead, this time it might be purchase orders, the vendor's invoices, maybe a return status, things like that. That's up to you, again, what you share outside of the company. So that's really it. I mean, I think Slack's going to be a big upgrade. It's got some great ramifications internally, but probably even more so once we really get into this. And it'll be interesting to see where Salesforce goes with it. It'll be, what can we do with our customers and suppliers to run our businesses, in less frictionless way, if you will. So with that, I'll turn it over. And by the way, we've written some blogs on this. Ramesh has posted videos on this as well that you can find from our website. But I'll turn it over to Ramesh, and he can take you through his thoughts on what he's learned so far. Ramesh?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. So let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen. I just start with this picture.
Yep.
Okay, great. Excellent. So as you can see, I mean, there is, as Tom mentioned, like the collaboration, bringing in collaboration into an enterprise space has more ramifications from a productivity standpoint, as well as from a cost reduction standpoint and efficiency standpoint, right? And all this can be enabled on desktop and mobile. So as users are spread across in different parts of geographies and access to information is necessary from a mobile standpoint, you can bring all these different individuals who play different roles in an organization, whether it's related to finance or customer success or account executives. All the users can be brought together into this whole conversation, and the level of decision making kind of raises to a very different level, right? So the decisions are more data driven, the decisions are more informed, and they are fast, right? So it's important to kind of have that picture in terms of what efficiencies can this collaboration bring to any organization. And as Tom mentioned, that this is something that is a requirement from a user base that is much more younger, and the Gen X is always used to Instagrams and Facebooks of the world. So having that kind of a communication is going to be critical. And what we feel is that in the next 3 to 5 years, email is going to be less and less form of communication when it comes to actions from an enterprise software, and more of this traffic is going to end up into these collaboration tools, into these channels where more people are tuned in, and it doesn't matter who is approving a purchase order. There are a few people who are tuned into that channel, and they are basically looking to act on that, on a specific task, right? So completion or the outcomes are more important than who does the task is basically the key aspect here. And when it comes to Rootstock, I mean, we extend the the processes from the customer engagement from CRM. So Tom mentioned about this. So there is more areas and more places that we can bring these collaboration in and drive more efficiencies. Conversations directly happening with shop floor, conversations happening directly in the warehouse. If there's a defect that is found, you can reduce a lot of production costs if that information is communicated effectively to the shop floor. So use cases like that is basically driving some of the efficiencies there. And we feel that this whole context of collaboration being an important part of people acting in different levels or different areas, making it frictionless is more key, right? So collaboration is one thing, but if it is not frictionless, in the sense you're not able to move information from Salesforce into Slack much more effectively, is not as appealing. And what the integration that has been delivered by Slack and on Salesforce, the key is to basically make sure that the whole transfer of information from Salesforce to Slack to users who are perhaps not CRM users, but they have to participate in the decision-making process, becomes much more streamlined, right? So we'll see that in a demo, that all these conversations are happening not in silos, but happening in the context of data that happens, right? And we feel that an intelligent and connected enterprise is far better in terms of efficiencies, that you can drive towards customer satisfaction or for improving the profitability of the company. So let's take a look at the demo. Now, just to preface this demo, this integration is today available on the App Exchange. So you can go to Salesforce App Exchange and you can download the Slack connector from there. The Salesforce app is also available on Slack. So you just have to activate it and authorize both the environments. So I'll open so that's the Salesforce environment, and that's the Slack environment. And I've authorized, this workspace to have, to authenticate towards, this user, and the activity happening on the Salesforce side can be now, be more open and transparent here. So what happens as part of the integration is the moment you install the app from the App Exchange into your org, you have some capabilities that are automatically added to each of the Lightning pages. There are two buttons that you will see at the top. One is send to Slack and Slack alerts. And what this does is basically any information you want to pass from this particular object. And keep in mind, this is our Rootstock custom object, right? This is not a Salesforce object, but this is our Rootstock custom objects. We have about over 800 plus objects on Salesforce, so largest ERP. So there's a lot of depth and breadth to what we deliver to the market. So this capability now applies to every part of the business process, and it can be automatically added with this current integration, right? So keep in mind, this current integration is pre-acquisition. So as the Slack gets more and more integrated into the platform, things might be more tightly woven into the products, right? So what does these two buttons do? So if you have a particular object, you want to send the information directly to Slack, you can say send to Slack, and it opens up a dialog box where it already identifies your current object. You have authenticated a specific workspace where you want to communicate. In that workspace, there is a specific channel where more people are tuned into that channel, and you pick that channel. Some of this defaulting can be also orchestrated. So you can basically type in the text and please check on vendor credits or something like that, right? And you can send this information to the Slack channel. So see what happens on the other side. That information got automatically transmitted with all the PO number, the order number, and the status, and all the information that you would want to transmit directly. So this is fairly frictionless in the sense that you didn't have to copy and paste or whatnot, right? So you basically are able to drive that information directly into that. You can automate some of the stuff with the Slack alerts button. So if you wanted to automatically, for your purchase orders, whenever a new purchase order is created, you want to, automatically transmit it to the Slack channel. That also can happen. So anybody who is tuned into that Slack channel knows what to do next, and if there is anything that needs to be done on that transaction, right? So that's a very nice way to kind of automate this whole process so that you're not sending to Slack on a manual basis. The other thing that you can do is essentially, if you are in a particular place here, you can basically click on this link, and that will basically open up that transaction right in Salesforce. So the communication from Slack, and if you wanted to kind of go to that transaction, if you're authenticated user into that on that org, you are directly transferred to that page or that particular object, right? You can also initiate search from here. So for example, I'm looking for this vendor. So if I'm looking for a vendor, I just say, okay, go to Salesforce and find a vendor ABC. So I'm giving that information. This information is only available to me. So it says only visible to you. It's not visible to the rest of the people who are tuned in because I initiated the search. If I wanted to expose this, I can. But if I wanted to go to the vendor master, I can just click here. I can look at the record, and I can go to the record directly here. right? So if I wanted to now, for this particular purchase order, make a comment, and I say, okay, for PO, so this information, I can now pass it on back to Salesforce. And I say add it to Salesforce. I'll give the key here. Right, so this information, what I've said here, that message is sent to Salesforce. And the way I can see it here is basically go to the PO and look at the activity. And now in my Lightning page, I've already placed this widget or a component on the Lightning page, which will keep track of all the communication that was sent back from. So anything happening in Slack can also be tied into your transaction itself. So that is an added capability that you can do, not only search, but also be able to pass on information from Slack to Salesforce, right? So the bidirectional communication is what makes it more seamless and meaningful. And we believe that this kind of capability for any collaboration tool, when it becomes very pervasive, both on desktop or mobile device. I mean, even if I have to share my mobile device, let me just real quickly do that and show you. So all this communication I'm seeing from in my Slack mobile device, I click on the PO, it'll seamlessly take me to the mobile, Salesforce mobile, and open up that PO. Right, now I can do whatever I want within the PO, and in fact do receipts. This is some of the capabilities that we have added into our mobile offering. But if you wanted to do a receipt on that PO, you can scan QR codes and things like that from here. So that extends the capability on the mobile device, and that's what makes it very interesting and attractive, that you don't have to be tethered to your desktop, but all this information is also seamlessly transferred to a mobile device, and transactions can happen at the place of where they're happening, whether it's a warehouse or a shop floor or whatnot. Does that make sense? Any questions, comments?
Oh, it makes sense to me.
Okay, that's pretty much what I had to cover. Is there anything else, Tom, you wanted me to cover?
I think Andrew may have some questions. I had a quick one, Ramesh. I was surprised when you and I first looked at this, when you showed me how it's not just Salesforce objects, but custom objects, which also mean if our customers create objects can be used. Were you surprised at how integrated this is already? I guess I was, but I just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, and also what was surprising was the way to deploy it and consume it was also pretty simple. So within a 30 to 45 minutes, all this integration was I was able to configure this in a specific org. So obviously they've made it very easy to consume and adopt, and that's important when you have new technology coming in. I mean, the cost is not that high, right? So and then it's very thought through well at this point in time. I mean, there can be more stuff that can be done as things get integrated into the platform. There'll be more and more deforking capabilities that will be available. And we don't know the roadmap of all this because the transaction hasn't finished, but I think this is going to drive a lot of efficiencies in manufacturing and other areas.
It'll be interesting. They say that they want to keep it as an independent product, yet very integrated. So sometimes those two things don't meet, but so far I'd say they've done a good job. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to add or questions? And certainly from the audience, we'd be happy to take them if we can answer them.
Yeah, I don't think I have any specific questions. I think, Tom, what you and Ramesh talked about and showed is very good as far as kind of what we know today and what you can do out of the box. I think at a high level, we're all seeing and all have been experiencing that traditional engagement models have been eroding. And with COVID and this whole past year, I think we're seeing a lot of businesses really expedite their path to remote, their path to collaboration, digital engagement, et cetera. And we're also seeing Salesforce being active in that. So obviously with the acquisition of Slack, we're also seeing some branding and new product kind of evolution. So Quip is now called Salesforce Anywhere. Communities is rebranded as digital engagement. So I think that to hit on and kind of piggyback on your guys' observations and what you shared, there's a higher level of expectations from end users and customers and partners and how they engage with the brands and businesses that they work with. And so these are all great steps in the right direction to offer that flexibility.
I do think how it works with communities will be a big thing. Haven't explored that too much of that myself yet, but I think that'll be a big plus for the whole community and how communities work. So,
yep.
Also, just wanted to say I just had a good side conversation with one of the other attendees about the whole idea about how chatter is in context of the data in your system, and Slack seems to be going down the same road. But just based on the example that Ramesh showed here, so I thought they're on the right track with this, because no one else wants another bolt-on app, right? We want it to be part of it, and that's the beauty of what we have today. So I don't have anything else today. Are there any other questions from the audience? We planned for a half an hour. We didn't want to overextend ourselves, but happy to take anything you got. All right, well, Delaney, thanks so much for having us. And Ramesh, thanks for the demo and joining us also, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for all that joined.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Right.